I'm going to pause here for a second and fire up my MAPP gas, which is what I use to heat it. I don't know if you're going to see it that well. I'm going to try a couple lightings. I'm going to shut off my fluorescent here because sometimes in this LCD it looks like you get a better shot of it with the lower lighting. So I'm going to click off my light here for a second. Yeah, you can almost see it better with that. So I'm going to try it with this regular standard lighting. You can kind of see that ring terminal a little better. So hopefully it'll turn out when I put it online here. So I'm going to step up and I'm going to use my MAPP gas, which is a high-powered butane torch, probably overkill for this purpose, but it's what I use for my plumbing when I do some plumbing work. It's a Burns-O-Matic. It's a MAPP gas, got the yellow tank. Anyway, you could probably use a regular butane torch to do this. Now the key with doing this is that you don't want to leave the heat in any one place for very long, number one. And number two, you don't like heat it up to the point where you burn it. You keep the heat moving and you start in the center and kind of work your way out. And as you see me do this, you'll see the shrink tubing on the outside shrink around and grab tight. And then at a certain point the solder is going to melt. You have to look really closely, but this ring right here in the center, you want to heat this till this just barely melts. It just kind of softens and turns liquefy. You don't want to overheat it. I found that if you overheat it, you don't want to go too far. You can not only turns these things black on the outside, but then it really kind of makes the solder run too much. So you just want to heat it enough where it liquefies. So here we go. Make sure I got a good camera angle here for you. I'm going to go ahead and fire up my MAPP gas. I'm going to heat this terminal, and we're going to shrink solder this push-on terminal. You can see I'm moving the torch, starting in the center. You'll see the terminal shrink solder terminal start to shrink. I also heat it up right on the plate so the adhesive kind of bonds at the plate as well. You can see it shrinking right around that terminal, the push-on terminal itself. Kind of go around the whole terminal and kind of keep it moving. And as soon as I start to see that solder ring in the center melt, I'm going to stop. So here we go. Okay, just starting to go. Looks like that's it. Okay, so it's actually turned to liquid a little bit. And sometimes you have to support the wire. What I do is I run these like a pigtail. I keep the wire short and then I splice them to one larger wire off the cell so it doesn't put a lot of weight on the terminal as I'm soldering. But as you can see, it's holding up pretty good. What I do is I just take a spray bottle and I cool it off right here so I can pull it off and I don't have to wait. I can pull it right off of the plate when I'm done. So I wait a couple seconds here and that's it. So you got a nice strong clean terminal here that has been shrink soldered, and it's sealed all the way around the terminal, and it's a very strong bond. You can't pull this apart even if you tried with a pair of pliers. I mean, it's very, very strong, and it's clean and it's sealed front and back, top and bottom. It just gives a really good bond to the wiring, and you got a nice solder terminal there as well, and again it protects right here where the connection is, keeps it from corroding. So anyway, I'm pretty happy with these. I just want to share this quick video of how to do the push-on terminals. I'm going to demonstrate real quick now a butt terminal with the same process. So I'm going to pause here for a second, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a butt terminal here, or I'll do one of these ring terminals because that's what you're going to be dealing with anyway mostly. Okay, pause. Okay, now I'm going to do a ring terminal example. Again, I stripped my wire here, my copper wire, about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to do one of the shrink solder ring terminals. All you do is you slip the terminal onto the wire, twisting it, get a little snug here, and you can see a good fit here. So that's how you connect it. And then I'm going to go ahead and solder this in the next step. So you push it all the way in, make sure it's nice and snug there. You actually solder it with the wire kind of vertical, up and down, straight up and down. So I'm going to back off this shot here so you can get a better idea as I shrink solder this. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try and keep this in the view of so you can see what I'm doing here. A little challenging to look at the video at the same time you're doing this, so I'm getting used to this. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to fire up the MAPP gas. I'm holding it vertical, straight up and down, so when you melt the solder it doesn't run up into the terminal. You want to keep this terminal clean from the solder. It'll tend to run up there when you heat it. Okay, I'm heating it, turning it around. In this case I can hold it in my hand, keeping the flame moving, keeping the heat moving. And again, I want to heat it just until that solder kind of starts to melt. Keeping the heat in the center, and there it goes. So I'm holding it up. As you can see, the solder already started to rush up in there. You got to be careful with that. Anyway, I'm going to cool it down here. That's a good example of what not to do. But anyway, when you're doing it, keep it vertical so it doesn't run that way, because as you can see, that's what it'll do if you hold it even flat. I wanted you to get a good shot of it while I was doing it. Anyway, you can see it's not too bad. Anyhow, let me back it off here. Let me get a better shot. Bring it up to the camera so you can see. It's a pretty good terminal connection, very strong. The solder didn't go that far, and it wouldn't even affect the bolt at this point, but you can see if you don't hold it vertically, it will run up into that terminal. So you can see, I can show you how strong this thing is. I mean, I just did it. I don't think I even cooled it that much. You go ahead and cool it again, and I'll show you. I'm holding it here and with pliers, and I'm putting all my strength trying to pull that thing off, and you can't. I'll get another pair of pliers if you don't believe me. In fact, I'll do that. Hang on. Okay, just to show you the strength of this, I got a pair of vice grips on one end of the wire, and I'm going to tug on this end, and you can see I'm putting a lot of force on there. This thing is not coming off. I mean, you can't wiggle it free. You can't pull it apart. I mean, it's on there really good. So anyway, I did want to demonstrate that to you and let you see what these shrink solder terminals can do. I mean, these connections are so important on these cells that we do that I think it's worth the expense. They're a little more pricey than you're going to find these regular crimp terminals, but in my opinion they're well worth it. I'm going to do one more quick video showing a butt splice just for information purposes. That could come in handy if you ever have to cut some wiring or splice it. And I have different sizes I can offer on my site. Right now I've got the 8 gauge or the 10 gauge and the 12 gauge, but there are smaller sizes. In fact, I'll do a pause here and I'll show you the smaller versions too, which can be handy for a lot of other purposes. I've used them in other projects that I've done. They're really, really nice for doing butt splices, which is a very tricky. Okay, I want to cover the butt splice terminals here, the shrink solder butt splices. Actually, I was wrong when I said before. This is actually an 8 gauge butt splice. Here's your 10 gauge, and your 12, and here's your 16. So those are some butt solder terminals that also will be on my site, which can be handy for splicing wires together, which is, as you might know, working with wiring is one of the more challenging things to do properly and strongly. And this solves that problem very, very easily. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare this wire for a shrink solder butt terminal, and I'll be right back.